Hey everyone, so let's talk about the abstract factory pattern. Now, the abstract factory pattern actually builds on top of the factory pattern. And I already made a video on the factory pattern, about the factory pattern, and I highly recommend you to check that out first before watching the abstract factory video, which is the one that you are watching right now, because the factory pattern by itself it's kind of complex, as I have mentioned it on the previous video, and the abstract factory pattern makes things a little bit weirder, right? Let's put it like that. But the idea of the abstract factory is to actually abstract the idea of the factory and kind of mingle together factories in a way that all of the factories actually follow a specific contract, let's say, and that makes it easier to instance different factories that you have on your application. Now, let's refresh the factory idea a bit. So on the last video, I talked about having a factory of stick figures. Now, imagine that you have a factory that produces stick figures. And the idea is that, let's say that you wanna have a top hat, a guy with a mustache and a top hat stick figure. And you basically ask for the stick figure factory to produce that old guy with a hat and a mustache for you, and it produces it to you and sends to your house, right? And you can do the same thing for this guy with a, I don't know how to call it, but like a simple hat, right? So you can have a stick figure with a simple hat, and you ask for the factory to produce it to you, and it sends it back to your home, basically. Pretty simple idea, straightforward idea of a factory, right? A real life factory. And the idea of the abstract factory is to actually build on top of that idea and add other options. Now, imagine that you had other factories in the figure, in the painting. Think that maybe you had like a action figure factory, and you also could have I don't know, like a comic figure, I don't know, for figures that look like comic books, something like that. And now you notice that you have different factories for similar things, right? The three of them produces figures, right? And what if you, like the user, this guy right here, wanted to produce a stick figure? To make things clearer, right? You could just go straight ahead and ask for a stick figure, right? But on a real life application, that would be kind of complex, because you have different sets of objects or entities which inherit similar attributes. They are stick figures. They're all figures, right? So you have stick figure, action figures, and comic figures. And now that's where the abstract factory comes into play. Basically, you could have an abstract factory, and the thing with abstract factories is that they use the abstract keyword or idea that OO, or object-oriented programming, has, where you have an abstract class that works like a contract for other classes, where you can extend it and only implement specific methods. But we don't have that on JavaScript, right? So we kind of have to emulate that, if that makes sense, right? So we could have a action, we could have a figure abstract class here, or let's call it abstract figure class, and that would kind of serve as a contract for the factories, explaining how the factories should actually work. So inside of the abstract figure class, you could have stuff like you could have like a method or a function that is called like create stick figure, right? Create figure, right? And they all could inherit that, and they all call the same method. They just override it, right? And so you kind of have that, and the three of them inherit from abstract figure class. And basically one concept that also gets in the way, and if you search about it, it will look kind of weird because the concepts kind of overlap. But you also have factories of factories, which basically act like a switch case that returns factories, or a conditional that returns factories, which is pretty similar to the factory parent itself, right? You kind of have like a switch case where you return specific factory, specific entities, right? So normally you have like a sitting in the middle of all of this flow, you have a factory of factories. Which is a weird name, to be sincere, but that's the idea. The stick figures go to the factory of factories, and then the factory of factories returns the specific stick figure factory that you want. So yeah, I know that's kind of weird and abstract, as the name says, but that's the idea. I will code in a bit to give a more concrete example of that, but that's basically the idea. That's all there is to it. And of course, you wouldn't apply that to all the problems that you have on a day-to-day basis. To be sincere, it's really rare to see the abstract factory being applied, at least in my experience. But anyway, now for the example, for the coding example, imagine that you have a page, right? A website, a web page. So let's use that guy right here. That will act like a page. So let's call it web page. And this web page is actually linked through different providers. Say you could have a tech website that links to your web page, and you could also have a music. You could also have a music web page that links through or funnels through your web page. And what that could actually result or do for you is that you could have targeted advertisements, right? Ads. And normally what you could do is you pay these guys to send or a funnel to your website, right? And inside of your web page, imagine that you have a squared advertisement, right? You could have a square advertisement, and this is not really a square, but let me make the font smaller and kind of emulate a square here. Yeah, that kind of looks like a square, right? Not really a square, but anyway. You could also have a rectangle ad, right, inside of your page. Now imagine that you also wanted to target specific demographics of your users and show them specific ads, right? You could show specific ads for technology and also for music. You don't want to show music specific ads to your technology users that were funneled through the tech website, correct? So you could use an abstract class for that, and I will show you how. So to give you the example, I've actually created a project which is pretty simple. I have an index file here that contains two different divs. One of them is for the squared banner and the other one is for the rectangle banner. So basically we are mapping this guy out, squared and also rectangle. And I have an entry point which is the main.javascript file that has two different methods. Basically, I have a render ads which receive a factory, right? So the render ads is basically to do the bootstrap of the application, and I also have the render ads method which basically fetches the factory, right? So basically is to wrap this up, right? So the entry points we call the factory of factories, which in turn will return all the classes, right? And I already set up the adds factory of factories, which will be the last piece that will actually probably code. But let me create the adds folder. Inside of the adds folder, we have to create the factory, right? Which is the abstract figure class in this example, but we'll have an abstract adds class, right? So abstract adds factory, let me call it like that. So class abstract adds factory. Now remember that I said that this guy right here actually emulates a factory, emulates an abstract class that we have on conventional object-oriented programming. So here we kind of have signatures of methods that we don't directly call, right? So to do that, let's create the first method. We'll have one to create a squared banner, right? And let me throw a new error here saying that the user should not instantiate, or let's call you should override this. And we'll have the same one now for the rectangle banner, right? Rectangle banner. And well, let's also export the abstract adds factory, right? So we should be good here. We have this class created, right? So next thing that we have to do is, let me already map the factory of factories. Now in real life you probably will not see that being called factory of factories, but I just want to point it out, the difference between like the abstract factory and the factory of factories, just to make that clear, right? Because if you see that pattern in your life, you already know that it's a factory of factories and not like an abstract factory. I hope that makes sense, but yeah, stick with me. So let's create the that as a conventional function, factory of factories, and let's receive the demography, right? And let's test the demography, and if the demography actually is equal to tech, we want to return the new tech factory, right? Tech factory, let's call it tech factory, right? So let's create a tech tech entity here, and we'll have one entity of that type for each demography that we want to target. On a larger application, we would probably call that tech demography or something like that. I just want to call it tech for now because just to make that more simple to code. So let's create a tech factory file, and this class tech factory, as I said, remember that all the factories that we have to abide a set of rules which is defined by the abstract class. So I need to actually extend the abstract adds factory, correct? Now since I extend that, I also need to re-implement the signatures that we have, correct, and override them. And what we actually will have to do here is, for the squared banner, we have to create a specific banner, squared banner for the tech entity. And also when we create the music one, we have to have a specific banner for that. So that being said, let me create a banners folder here, banners, and let me create a squared banner file, and this guy will actually be called squared banner, and the squared banner will actually have a render function which will also throw a new error because you cannot unique override this. So basically what we are actually doing is, as I said, we are emulating abstract stuff because we don't have that on JavaScript. If you go to Java or C# or something like that, you will have abstract stuff there, but we don't have that on JavaScript. It's just that it's an interesting pattern to know on JavaScript because that may be useful for you, but as I said, it's kind of weird to implement that in JavaScript. You can do it as I will show here, but it's kind of weird in a way that we don't really have abstract stuff here. So for example, I create a squared banner here and I need to throw an error saying the user that they cannot instantiate the squared banner. So basically we have the squared banner here, right? And also let's export this squared banner. And after exporting it, we need to create a tech squared banner, which will be a class. Let me copy exactly what squared banner has, and tech squared banner, tech squared banner, and tech squared banner. Oh no. Yeah, now it's correct. Extend squared banner, right? And when it extends squared banner, we also have a render method here. The difference is that here we actually want to implement the squared banner itself. So we need to render it. And to render it, we need the ID of the element, right? So element ID. And now let's use plain old good JavaScript document.getElementById, passing through the element ID, and we need to actually use the text content attribute, and let's do something like, just for sake of the example, tech squared banner. So we have the tech squared banner set up, and now for the tech factory we actually need to export it. Before I forget that guy here, let me export the tech factory here, and also let's create the squared banner right now. So return new tech squared banner, new tech squared banner. Perfect, that's the guy that we need. Okay, so now we got the tech factory, the squared banner set up. Let's already create the rectangle banner. It's the same thing basically. Now it's a matter of just copying and pasting stuff. Tech rectangle banner, and for the tech rectangle banner we export it, and let's do tech rectangle banner. Now on the tech factory, we need now to return the tech rectangle banner, and also let's import that guy. Now we should be set up, I hope. Let me see if I didn't forgot anything. Yeah, I forgot to import a tech factory here. Tech factory, factory of factories, tech factory. Now we have everything set up, and also let's export the factory of factories because that's our entry point and we need that guy. Now we should be good. If I open the abstract factory here, you can see that I already have the square and the rectangle places set up. And let me see if everything's set up. Let me save that guy, let me save that, and let me, yeah, I have an error here. Let me see. Yeah, I think I imported the wrong thing here. Let me import that correctly. Add factory of factories. Did I call that add factory of factory? Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, now it's correct. Yeah, now we should be set up. Class with constructor cannot be invoked with no. I forgot something here, I think. Yeah, return new tech factory. Return new squared banner. Class constructor abstract adds factory cannot be invoked without new extends abstract. Yeah, weird error. I invoked the class directly here. Now it's working. So now we have, as you can see, we have the rectangle banner and also the square banner set up. Now you can see that we also have the tech. We only have tech here, right? So let me just do something like demography types.javascript, and here we can have a constant called demography types, and let's call tech. Let's emulate like an enum or something like that. In music, And here we can also have all the other demography types that we need. And let me just to make it more reusable, right? So we have tag here, and also let's import that guy on the add factory of factories here. And I need to import the guy. Okay, so now we're good. Now let's implement the music stuff. Now I think I'll probably speed this up on the edition, because when I'm actually editing the video, because it's basically the same thing, but for the music entity. So yeah, let me get that set up. We're doing music. Music here, and we have the music factory, and we have music. In here we also have music right there, and here we'll call music. And we have music, music, so music, music, music. Okay, so like that, music factory, new music right there. Also have new music right there, right? So I think that now I'm back. I've created the music entity, and as you can see, we have the music factory, the same thing. Create squared banner. The only difference is that we are actually calling the music squared banner and also the music rectangle banner, which are two separate classes that I created here, in the same way that I have on the tech entity. So now we need to call it on the factory of factories, right? So if we have a music type, we return a music factory, right? So we return a music factory. I think that I didn't export it correctly. Music factory. Right, now it's correct. And on the main file, let's create now the demography types.music. You will see that now music square banner is set up, and that's pretty much it, to be sincere. We have the same flow, but for music, right? So we have the abstract adds factory, which is this guy right here, right? The only thing is that we have the create squared banner, and we also have the rectangle banner. So abstract adds factory, and we only have two types here. Let me delete all this stuff. So we have basically tech, and also the music factory and tech factory. As you can see, this diagram is pretty much really organized. That's my main skill, as you can see. So tech factory, music factory, and we also have the factory of factories, correct? So you ask for example, for the music one, and the factory of factories returns that to you, and you're all set up. Now that's pretty much everything that I had to show for the abstract factory. As you can see, we implemented this same flow. Yeah, have a good one.